Hi guys, Miss Slater here, and this week we're going to be learning about how to compare and contrast the experiences of characters in a book. So I hope you listened to the awesome song on comparing and contrasting. Now we're going to go ahead and get started by reading a story called Ant and Grasshopper. And this book is written by Luli Gray and illustrated by Giuliano Ferri. And as we read, I want you to think about how the two characters in this story, Ant and Grasshopper, are alike and how are they different. Here's our title page, Ant and Grasshopper. Written by Luli Gray, illustrated by Giuliano Ferri. Ant was rich. His house was very grand, with many rooms, and the storeroom was his favorite. All through the spring and summer, he worked hard gathering things to eat for the winter, and every afternoon he went to the storeroom to count them. By June, he had 947 beans, 28 raisins, and a fine, smelly wedge of yellow cheese. 945, he counted, 946, 947. Then he took exactly 3 bites of cheese. Delicious, he said, and began to count his raisins. So what do we know about Ant so far? I know that he is rich and has a huge house with lots of food, and that he spends all spring and summer gathering food so that he has it for the winter. One day, as he sat counting, he heard a noise. Shh, he said, I'm counting. The noise went on and on. Ant opened the door, and there, on his lawn, stood a grasshopper playing a fiddle. Well, I never, said Ant. Well, I always, said Grasshopper. It's June, Ant. The sun is warm. The sky is blue. Come out and dance. I'll play for you. Said Ant. You should be storing up food for the winter, not fiddling around wasting time. So far, I already noticed a difference between Ant and Grasshopper. I noticed that Ant thinks that it's important to work hard and collect food, whereas Grasshopper thinks that he has all the time in the world and he should really just spend time having fun. So that's something I can contrast, something that's different between them. I know that something the same between them is they're both insects. And they both must live in the same town. All summer long, Ant worked hard. Every afternoon, he counted his beans and his raisins and his cheese. And all summer long, he heard Grasshopper playing his fiddle and singing. Sometimes the music got into Ant's head and made him lose count. 24, no, 26. Oh, drat that hoppergrass! He is confuzzled and puzzled. He said hoppergrass instead of grasshopper. September came. It was harvest time, and Ant added to his rich store. He had 604 kernels of corn, 72 peanuts, and a piece of ham bigger than he was. Delicious and nutritious, he said. Come, ye thankful creatures, come sing a song of harvest home. All is safely gathered in, ere the winter storms begin, sang Grasshopper, peeking in the window. Oh, hush, said Ant, yanking down the shade. Do you think Grasshopper's collected any food yet? October came, with bright leaves tumbling on a breeze that carried a promise of winter. Ant sat fidgeting at his desk, trying to add up his accounts, but his pen kept making swans out of the 2s and fat snowmen out of the 8s, and the numbers hopped around in his head, refusing to settle down. 604 kernels of corn gathered on a summer morn. No, no, no. 7 ounces of ham. Yes, ma'am. Oh, for heaven's sake, what's wrong with me? he heard a tap, tap, tapping and flung the door open. Oh, Aunt, let me in. There's a good fellow. It's getting cold and I'm so hungry. Ha! Said Aunt. I knew it was you with your fiddle-de-doo. I warned you. You danced and sang all summer while respectable folk worked hard for a living, and it serves you right. Good night. And he slammed the door and went back to counting. So what else do we know about Ant and Grasshopper? One thing I know that they both have in common is they both need food to survive for the winter. And it seems like Ant has a lot of food and the Grasshopper doesn't. But Grasshopper can play the fiddle and sing, but Ant can't. That's something different. I wonder what's going to happen. It doesn't seem like Ant's very nice. He's not willing to share his food. I guess we'll have to keep reading to find out. November blew in, cold and blustery. Woo! Cried the wind, rattling the windows while Ant paced back and forth. I'm sure I don't know what's gotten into me, he muttered. He sat down by the fire, watching the flames dance up the chimney. I wonder, said Ant. I wish. The clock struck 10. Bong, 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 bong. Ant went to bed. But fragments of rhyme and wisps of music jangled about in his head, and he thrashed and kicked till the bedclothes were all a tangle. When at last he fell asleep, he dreamed he stood on a stage before a great crowd that shouted, "Play! Dance! Sing!" And he couldn't play a note or dance a dance. He opened his mouth to sing, but there wasn't one song in him. No song at all. I can't, I'm an ant! Boo! Roared the crowd. Boo! So what do you think Ant was wondering about before? He seems to be worried about something. How do you think he's going to solve this problem? Any predictions? The cold, hateful booing blew Ant right out of bed with a bump, and he woke up. The night had grown quiet. Too quiet, thought Ant. He ran to the door, and there, on the step, lay Grasshopper, barely visible under a thick layer of snow. Grasshopper, is that you? Said Ant. What are you doing? Get up, go home. Don't have a home, said Grasshopper, his teeth chattering. Go home, exclaimed Ant. I never heard of such a thing. After a moment, Ant dragged, or I'm sorry, I read that wrong. No home, exclaimed Ant. I never heard of such a thing. After a moment, Ant dragged Grasshopper into the house, where he laid him by the fire in the second best peanut shell. Cold, Grasshopper said, shivering. Oh, yes, indeed, poor fellow, have some hot cider, said Ant. But Grasshopper was shivering too hard to swallow. Here, said Ant, here are 5 delicious beans and 3 bites of nutritious cheese and 2 more delicious raisins. But Grasshopper was shivering too hard to eat. Ant tucked a dandelion down quilt around Grasshopper. I didn't know, Ant said. I had no idea. I didn't mean. Grasshopper's eyes opened and he looked up at Ant. Hello, Ant, he said. Achoo! Bless you, said Ant, wiping the sneeze off his face. Bless you, said Grasshopper. Did I hear you mention beans and raisins? All through the winter, Grasshopper stayed with Ant, playing and singing every evening when Ant was done counting. One evening, as the old year drew to a close, the two friends sat by the fire. 1,142, said Aunt, closing the account book with a sigh. Sometimes, he said, sometimes I wish I could sing, just a bit, you know. Sing, said Grasshopper. Anyone can sing, but working hard and counting are splendid things. Why, you saved my life with your 11 jillion beans, raisins, and corn. 1,142, actually, said Aunt, including peanuts, but anyone can count. Not me, said Grasshopper. He played a chord on his fiddle. Do you know, here we come a-waffling? He sang it 3 times through, and then, rather shyly, and to tell the truth, quite off key, Aunt joined in. Here we come a-waffling with syrup and with jam. Here we come to dance a jig and eat a lot of ham. Pizza joy come to you, made of pickles, mice, and glue. And we wish you and squish you a happy new year. And we wish you a happy new year. I wish I could sing like you, said Aunt. I love the way you sing, said Grasshopper. I wish I could count. Oh, Grasshopper, said Aunt. Everybody counts. And everybody does count. So think about how Aunt and Grasshopper are the same and how they're different. And your job is going to be to complete a compare and contrast Venn diagram, comparing and contrasting the two characters in the book. I'll get you started. So if there we go. So as you can see, I have a Venn diagram here. And on one side of my Venn diagram, I have Ant, and on the other, I have Grasshopper. I'm going to come up with one thing to put in each part of my Venn diagram to get you started, and then you're going to complete the rest on your own. So one thing that I know about Ant is he works hard to collect food all summer, all spring, summer, and fall, actually. So he works hard to collect food all spring, summer, and fall. One thing I know about Grasshopper, he thinks it's more important to play music than to work. Okay? One thing they have in common, well, I know that both of them are insects. What other things can you think about that are the same and different about Ant and Grasshopper? Try to come up with at least 3 things to go in each part of the Venn diagram. If you're feeling really motivated, you could come up with even more. Try to come up with as many as you can. I can't wait to see what you write. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's reading lesson. Have fun.